Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to the City Center Community Committee for June 23rd, 2026. My name is Councillor Orlico. I have the moment the chair of this meeting, maybe my last, who knows? But I also want to make sure everybody is aware that our committee is very diligently working on many fronts, and with the team of Councillor Rawlins and Councillor Gilroy, we represent the City Center Community Committee. We also have our administration here, and we also have our Ms. Ford is our committee clerk. She'll keep us all in line as best we can. We'll see how that goes. She'll do her best. We're pretty hard to control. So first of all, do the land acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge that we're on Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples. In the national homeland, the Red River Métis, our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation and Treaty 3 territory. So we're going to move on. Starting up, we have delegations.
We do the minutes.
Oh, yeah. So
May 29th are the last
approval of minutes for May 29th. All in support. Moved by Councillor Rollins. All in support. Okay. Approved. Approved.
Wonderful.
Okay. Next.
Also, can I move an agenda item for two new business items for the end of the agenda? One concerning the retirement announcement of Councillor Orlico, and another one concerning the call from City Center, basically the only identified housing committee this term, to address Winnipeg's drug poisoning crisis and public safety challenge.
Additionally, there are three more new business motions.
Oh, and so moved.
So with those two, so moved. All through? Yes. Okay, go ahead. Other ones?
Delegations. Okay.
No, let's do the other.
Oh, I apologize. Yeah.
No worries. Let's do the other agenda items.
Oh, I moved a motion for all of them, but if you want to put them on the record,
Yes, they have.
they include a lot of traffic management, I think.
Yeah, from Councillor Gilroy, we have a four-way stop control at Downing Street and Yarwood Avenue. That's one of the motions I'd like to put forward. From yourself, Councillor Orlico, the Community Incentive Grant Program for the Fort Garry Community Centre. And then from Councillor Rollins, a Community Incentive Grant Program I guess it would be a recommendation for approval once the application is received for Churchill Park United Church.
Okay. You don't have an application for that one yet.
So we do have an application. I'm not sure why it wasn't put on the community services agenda. I think they were likely waiting for me to put a price point to that on what they were going to ask community services. My concern, though, is if we put a motion, it might delay what otherwise would happen in the public service. So
we'll put it on the agenda. We can go for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. On the additions, new business, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Carried. Okay. Delegations.
Sounds great. So first up, I have Jeff Del Bueno, the architect, with respect to the plan approval at 160 Ash Street. That's report number 3. Would you like to join us at the chair?
Hi, everyone.
Hi there.
I did submit something to present that we can talk to. Just put that up here. Great. Thanks everyone for having me. As stated, I'm Jeff Del Bueno with Lola Construction Management. I'm the acting architect on the topic of 160 Ash. So want to just start off by thanking the council for their ongoing support through this process. I feel that with your input, we have designed a building which responds to the growing needs of the academy area and does it in a way that will provide a quality, low-density housing solution, which enhances the academy streetscape and will contribute to the overall pedestrian life of the area. North River Heights, as you know, is defined as a mature community, which is mandated for increased density by our Winnipeg 2045 Strategic Development Plan. Our property is located at the corner of a collector thoroughfare, which, as per mature neighborhood infill guidelines, allows for taller building heights and higher unit counts. Our design has respected the size of the neighboring properties and is a modest proposal compared to the multifamily and commercial properties, which are in its direct proximity. We believe that we have demonstrated a sensitivity to the neighboring properties with the location of the building on site and by maximizing the setbacks with all our neighbors. This was done carefully and thoughtfully so that none of the properties would be adversely affected. The overall design of our building and its facades adheres to the design criteria set out in the Mature Neighborhoods Guidelines. Public-facing facades have incorporated a variety of materials, which include brick masonry, metal wall and roof cladding, expansive glazing, and 2 colors of acrylic stucco. Visual interest and articulation come from large arched windows, recessed entryways, mansard roofs and eaves, and street-facing balconies. All units are accessed with grade level entrances which face Academy and respond to the pedestrian nature of the street. Ample parking has been provided, with each unit having 2 enclosed parking stalls which are accessed via a rear-facing driveway off the lane. All parking is concealed within the building and has been thoughtfully designed to have no negative visual impacts. As a result of the previous public hearings, we have actually modified the north-facing windows, which are the ones seen at the top of the building, to be more clerestory in nature to help provide greater privacy for our closest neighbors. New landscaping, which includes appropriately sized trees and foundation plantings, have been provided to meet mature neighborhood guidelines and were coordinated with the planning department during our permit application. Overall, we feel that our proposal not only meets the mature neighborhood guidelines, it exceeds many of the design and quality standards it mandates. We understand that this plan approval hearing is an important part of the approval process and will ultimately help our project yield its best result. We look forward to discussing our design with the committee and incorporating any suggestions that you might have. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions?
That's the side rendering.
This would be the ash facing, yes. So this is the Academy facing elevation.
Yeah.
This is the north facing elevation, and this would be the ash facing elevation.
Okay, excellent.
And the ash facing was designed to make it appear not like a blank wall, more like a home.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, that was
Yeah, and incorporate some of the elements. So that was something that in our initial application, we had it designed differently, and through conversations with Councilor Orico and Dylan, certainly made changes to this facade, and we feel like represents what the mature guidelines hopes to achieve.
What's a better outcome?
And then just the last one we heard at the public hearing was the concern about privacy, mostly in the back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there you've taken those top windows and were you done with those to make it a little more?
So essentially with those windows, we raised the sill to 5 feet.
Right, so you think it's top of the heads walk by that put it.
Correct, yeah. So, but there's really no like downward sight lines from those windows. So, and that was something that was not even mandated by anyone, but through the public process, we felt like would, be the most respectful option and actually yield us quite a nice result for the tenants there. So all of those windows start at 5 feet and then they go to the underside of the ceiling, which is 9 feet. So nice, tall 4-foot window, but at a level that respects neighbors.
And the trees haven't changed since your last application?
They have not, no.
Good. Okay, anybody else? See none, all in support?
We're not there yet.
Why not?
No, we're just.
Wait, with the delegations. Sorry, I'm speaking a lot. That's it for us. Okay, anything else you want to say?
It will once again have my support for the record. Just making conversation now.
We're good? Okay, we're good. You can have a seat. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Is Pedro coming? No.
He
Online?
has joined us via Zoom. So just for the record, next up is Pedro Chagas with Chagas Architecture. He's to be heard with respect to the plan approval at 1460 Corridon Avenue. So Pedro, I'm going to ask you to start your video.
Are there any more steps for?
No, you can go. Thank you. Yeah, we'll let you.
Hello there.
Morning. I apologize for not being in Winnipeg today to attend the hearing, but I do still. We've been working hard towards getting our plan approval reviewed by your administration. It's followed. It was concluded a process of public hearings and public consultation that we've had in the past for the project, and we've adhered and added and augmented to improving the property, in particular to the variances that were identified at the time of our variance and rezoning. We further have enhanced those elements to provide more landscaping, more privacy towards our neighboring property owners to the east as well as to the west. And these things have been incorporated into the plan examination that Dylan has produced. And we've adhered to enhancing those finishes and those elements to the project. And those have all been presented in the plans that were submitted to administration for our plan approval application. So I would encourage any questions that anybody may have on the file.
Do you have any questions?
Not at this time.
No, not seeing anything. Thank you, Pedro. We're good.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay,
Okay, that concludes our registered delegations.
you're good? Good. Okay, moving on to reports.
Sounds good. So item number 1 is an extension of time, subdivision and rezoning at 740 Holly Avenue.
So moved.
So moved, all in favor?
Aye.
Approved, opposed, none, carried. Plan approval, 1460 Corridon Avenue.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, none, carried. Plan approval, 160 Ash.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, none, carried. Traffic calming measures, Ellis Avenue to Aaron Street.
So moved.
So moved, all in support? Aye.
Right.
Opposed, none, carried. Okay,
So we can move on to the new business items.
please, yeah,
I can suggest the four-way stop control at Downing Street and Yarwood Avenue. I have some prints if anybody is interested. If you like.
all in support?
So moved.
Be read, yeah.
Okay.
So moved.
All in support? Aye. Opposed, none, carried.
Okay, and then Councillor Orlico, your
Rating criteria,
waiving criteria for your community center director.
all in support? Aye. Opposed?
So moved. Thank you for paying for that. We have a share Z zone on the Hobson and Victoria site, and that tractor likely will be used from both Fort Garry's and I'll endeavor to support something in the future, like I think I supported their that they just
Well,
had,
$1 million with spray pad would be great.
and $1 million.
Spray, just in the future.
If all the spray pads in Fort Rouge's Fort Garry and Fort Garry weren't eliminated through a round of cuts, I think we would have had one in 2027. So yes, absolutely can commit to that.
Okay, so all in support? Aye. Opposed, none, carried.
And then Councillor Rowland's recommendation of approval for $50,000 towards the Churchill Park United Church with the CIGP funding.
Okay, all in support?
Aye.
Opposed, none, carried.
Okay, and I was not aware of 2 other motions that you had mentioned. We can start with either one.
Can we do the business first, and I'll just send it? I don't know if I've sent it around yet.
Yeah.
Let me just put it in an email. Okay.
wanted to, we could also take a break and come back at 10:15, a little earlier than
Yeah.
public hearings to.
I'll be here. So.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so on the record, anyone still joining in or listening on YouTube, we'll take a break and come back a bit early to hear 2 more new business items and then go into our public hearings.
Back at 10:20.
Sure.
10:20 it is. Okay,
Perfect.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the City Center Community Committee meeting for June 23rd. We're going to just finish off. We're going to do first, finish off reports, and then we'll get into public hearings very shortly. Councillor Rollins had 2 new items to add to the agenda. First item is, what's the title?
Are you interested in proceeding right now with posting?
Yeah, so it's an item for information on emerging action plan to address Winnipeg's drugs poisoning crisis, public safety challenges, and community impacts.
All in favor of hearing the item? Aye, opposed, none, carried.
So to introduce the item, as discussions continue ahead of this week's special meeting on the drug poisoning crisis, City Center Community Committee wanted to acknowledge a few ideas that are coalescing and have been coalescing in the community. There have been several emergency community meetings that Councillor Gilroy and I have attended or continue to attend, including an upcoming one with Gordon Bell and the Superintendent of Winnipeg School Division on the drug poisoning crisis. Countless meetings with and emails to police, community, businesses, including businesses that have now shut down their offices downtown and working from home, like Access Credit Union, that on Portage, that really this is a scandal, right? This is really troubling. As City Center, we're the longest running housing committee that this city has, and to date there has been no other committee of housing that has been announced, I wanted to put on the record the emerging framework that recognizes Winnipeg's drug poisoning crisis and also our public safety challenges and the growing threat to community well-being and economic vitality. So I don't want anyone to have the impression that it isn't because solutions aren't here and ready from electeds. As anybody has seen, Councillor Gilroy and I, or Councillor Gilroy and Emma Dedin Wood, has been forwarding ideas in order to help stem the tide of social disorder, support external nonprofit agencies. Several councillors have, despite the fact that we warned about the consequences at this committee of the 2025 cuts to outreach services, despite the fact that we warned about them again in 2026. We've still been here as the original architects of that 2020 funding that was $550,000, of which we routinely spend only $387,000, and the leftover now is, I guess, whoever screams the loudest and gets a mindful cleanup, because we subcontract that to most. So while council has been told that, there's no more room, for instance, on the 2 other providers we used to have, Resource Assistance for Youth, who provided outreach services to folks on the street that were under 21, a critical service, and St. Boniface Street Links, a critical service that I know some of my residents really miss and advocate, and councillors are still funding that. We've been told there's no additional funding. We know there is, because that's the funding basket that the city is using for mindful cleanups. So the framework that is coalescing amongst community is threefold. One, there is really a growing consensus that we're in a drug poisoning crisis and a public health and public safety emergency, and that available resources of governments really should be deployed rapidly to address it. It would be surprising, I think, for most Winnipeggers to know that to date there hasn't been a council seminar in really ever this term that wasn't called by members of this committee, right? Just like this emergency meeting. This is not routine business, and that is really problematic. It is really problematic when city council doesn't have access to information that, for instance, in early spring, all of the shelters brought to the mayor's office and the CAO of this city, declaring that this summer would be a crisis without it. Why? Because in Dinniwamac, the lowest barrier shelter was closed and Siloam was destabilized to the point where they were having to pick up the pieces. And while we saw just a few days ago emergency funding of the province to stabilize Siloam, it is really late in the day. And so there needs to be a concerted effort for council, all of council, folks in the know, like this housing committee, to get information from community. And so to that end, I think there's work to do. In terms of concrete actions that community is asking this council to do and have been for some times is to expand street outreach teams by increasing staffing resources and operating hours throughout Winnipeg. The reductions in 2025 meant that today our loan provider has one van and 3 people. When they can leave their doorstep and encounter piles and piles of people, that is woefully insufficient. They have another broken down van, and I have committed to supporting their fundraising from Fort Rouge, Fort Garry. However, it's the available hours, staffing. In other cities, we know through the good work of the public service that there is either 400,000 for a 50-person managed encampment to $5 million. So we are grossly underfunding just what the city does. And that's the public service report that is available, the jurisdictional scan that's available for all to see from April. That was before Executive Policy Committee, when they were supposed to be discussing an option of Councillor Gilroy's on managed encampments, something incidentally that just came out of Ontario in the form of a judicial ruling. But between 400,000 and $5 million, the city of Winnipeg is underfunding street outreach. That's a really important figure. It's substantiated in that public service report. That was good work for the public service. It was shocking to me when I had mono that it wasn't, and I was away for health reasons, that it was not thoroughly discussed and examined at Executive Policy Committee. But what's even more shocking was that when community came, it never flowed to council, neither from the public service nor at the political committees responsible. And so restoring and enhancing the daytime shelter and cooling and warming spaces and providing coordinated sanitation, garbage collection and maintenance at known hotspots is another priority emerging. Councillor Gilroy, West Broadway, the portions that we share of the West End have a known hotspot. And it is around a place that also is striving to do work, and that's Agape Table. Known hotspots typically are food security havens. They cannot necessarily bring people in that have consumed drugs and are completely unstable, but they are providing much needed water and food to them. But it is creating a lot of garbage and a lot of social disorder. it isn't, I want to be super clear. It's not the not-for-profit that's creating it. It is the system failures. And so restoring some of that access when we have known shelters down is part of it. Review and reform current encampment response practices that displace people to commercial lobbies, doorsteps, rest and break time areas, like at a daycare that my ward has in my ward, parking lots and back alleys. The current encampment response, I did not support because I knew we had reduced the resources and it would be impossible to enforce. We have never had a discussion on what enforcement or outreach would look like. That is a really difficult fact when there is so much strife. And as things have emerged and people have warned us that things will emerge, because when you shut down available shelter space, what do you think is going to happen? And when the sector tells you in an email in writing what will happen and what they urgently need, how is it that we never had a forum for that? So reviewing this current encampment response and practices that displace people to commercial lobbies, doorsteps, rest and break time areas, parking lots and back alleys really needs to be job number one for the city. Manitoba government actions are also needed. Expanding 24/7 access to downtown and community-based addictions medicine. It is very surprising to people that we don't have 24/7 alternative response like the ARC program with Winnipeg Police. I don't know why it's surprising when Chief Danny Smith would get out there every year and say that we're literally not graduating enough allied health professionals, meaning social workers. Right now, our largest regional hospital, HSC, has under 48% of social workers at any time on staff. Allied health is as in crisis as doctors and nurses in this province. So I don't know why people are surprised, but if they are, that is why a service that is available in every other city, a mental health social worker with a police officer that is 24/7, isn't available here. We need the province to really examine those calls directly from police chiefs. And Chief Danny Smythe and I disagreed on so many fronts, but that one I greatly admired him for supporting. Ensuring fairness in public safety investments. The province has chosen to fund institutional safety officers, and there is no one around this table that doesn't understand the reflexive nature of seeing a safety problem and wanting a foot patrol to address it and then moving into that space. But, while the province has chosen to do legislation and institutional safety officers for provincial workplaces and crown corporations like Hydro, to absorb the significant security costs that and associated costs with the social disorder, business districts like the West End, downtown, West Broadway, local schools like Gordon Bell and St. John's, childcare centers, and food security have to bear those security costs through private security and private foot patrols themselves. So unless or until Manitoba extends comparable support through broader public safety strategy that protects all workplaces and not only just those funded by government, we really need a stop to the proliferation of foot patrols until we have a public, like some equity in and fairness in our public safety investments, so that it's not just short-term grant funding going into a large biz district or a small one that has little capacity to have peace officers and they're not peace officers. And it's creating a confusion on who to call when you need support. You call a foot patrol versus 911. And I want to be really clear. What is happening in my neighborhood, 3 known addresses, And what's happening in Councillor Gilroy and Councillor Orlico, because there's no neighborhood in this city that's immune, include criminal code violations. And that is typically just the police purview. It is not foot patrols. And so very specific language here of ensuring fairness in safety investments and really halting institutional safety officers, because fundamentally, what is the difference between HSC and their relationship to Minister of Health and the WHA, and a school division and their relationship to a school board and the Minister of Education? I don't see one. Our communities deserve a bit of an answer on that. And finally, for the province to fix enforcement and resourcing gaps in Safer Communities and Neighborhoods Act. What a lot of people don't know is when there's known drug trafficking and exploitation sites, the police, to get investigatory resources, call the Safer Communities and Neighborhoods Act programming in the ministry, in the Justice Department. Sorry, we don't have ministries. Winnipeg businesses and residents are being forced to repeatedly report the same address, the same criminal activity, the enhanced criminal activity in the place next door, drug, sex trafficking, while enduring this complaint-driven response that they are told, even after a year of reporting, that there are no investigation resources coming. So this chronic criminal activity and protecting neighborhoods and the relationship of resource deployment for Safer Communities and Neighborhoods Act needs to be understood. The resourcing has to be improved, because when people are calling day after day about a property next door that they can see drugs and more than one property, when they can see drugs moving back and forth, they can see people being exploited, it is a miracle that they're still reporting. And so this needs to be job number one for a Safer Community and Neighborhoods Act resourcing to really be examined. All governments really should formally recognize the drug poisoning crisis and the public health and public safety emergency. It is bizarre to me that we have an HIV/AIDS crisis that is per population more extreme than the whole continent, well, that is second to the whole continent of Africa in Winnipeg. You get HIV/AIDS uptake through subsistence sex work and drug use. And it is a highly treatable disease. But that is being named as a crisis, and the preceding cause isn't being named as a crisis, is beyond me. And I'm hoping Dr. Roussin isn't deterred from calling it a crisis, because currently addictions medicine is outside of primary health with housing. Providing regular and joint public updates, I'm going to let Councillor Gilroy talk about in terms of that, but there needs to be a formal response. And the point of putting this on the record today is that we don't want anyone to think that this hasn't been a discussion amongst us or between us. While the three of us used to serve on executive policy committee that readily hosted council seminars with public administration, readily provided documents to all of council, this one doesn't. And you see it in the confidence of Winnipeggers. It can be turned around. It was not lost on me that the day we asked for a meeting, and I want to acknowledge my colleague had asked for ones long before, multiple times, that it was the day that the Probe Research poll hit that showed perhaps that City Hall wasn't listening to Winnipeggers, and it is reflected in that Probe Research poll. And it's not lost on me that that's the day that I ended up getting a meeting. And so this should not be how council works together. It is emblematic of why I left Executive Policy Committee, because this is a pattern of not acknowledging the work that took place before anyone got here, and not learning and not listening. And eventually it actually is reflected in not listening to Winnipeggers, to the point where I believe all businesses are going to come forward and coalesce around these and perhaps a little more priorities for both the city of Winnipeg and the Manitoba government. So that's what's on for the information deck. I hope folks are listening to this meeting. If not, we know that there is, thanks to clerk's efforts, more immediate records. But that's the opening ideas that are coalescing in advance of the meeting of council and the meeting on Friday that is to be held after the council meeting this month.
Mhm. And just to put, I guess, my thoughts on record, it won't be as long, but
Sorry.
no, it's okay. That's the problem. We haven't had the dialogue that we needed to have at council in order to deal with some of these complex issues. And just a call on the province, if they are here, and one of the things is we do need is the RAM clinic open 24/7. You know, that's the rapid access to medicine. That is critical if we're going to help people get off of out of addictions. And that is one access that I think we need to, the province really needs to review. But in terms of that, we need to make sure that we're discussing this at the city level. And so, you know, I want the community to know that I am hearing them, and I know Councillor Rowlands too. We are trying to work on these things, but we do feel like we're not being heard, right? We're not being listened to. And we're the ones that are really impacted because it's our wards that are critically seeing the high numbers of individuals that are unhoused. And of course, the addiction crisis that is kind of plaguing our streets right now. And so we need to have a coordinated approach to dealing with this, but that starts with conversation and communication, which we've lacked up to this point. So looking forward to the discussions, and I know that Councillor Rowlands and I are going to bring in people that we need to bring in to continue these conversations. And so very supportive of the motion, and thanks Councillor Rowlands for doing the fast typing and the organizing. Appreciate it. So those are my comments.
Very good. Yeah, nothing more to follow up on that. The focus of our the lack thereof. I know we're getting some housing in place, which is nice. Obviously, there's some good things going on, but until Winnipeg can get a handle on the more ways and approaches that we can turn the tide of this, we're always going to be caught in this loop. So definitely, and it will take all of council, not just a few people or no people, to be trying to figure out the ways forward on this, and in partnership with their other two levels of government. So in the spirit of getting the ball rolling and maybe get some awareness of this, definitely support it as well. So all support of the information, receiving this information.
Aye.
Okay, so we're gonna have to carry on for, unless yours is real quick, we have the public hearing coming up. So we have 4 minutes till we have to start that.
Okay.
So if we do your last one later on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So
After the
we'll go on to
public
hearing. Thank you.
People will still be watching.
Well.
Okay, so I will introduce our public hearing. I'm just going to admit we have several folks joining us via Zoom. In accordance with the City of Winnipeg Charter and the Development Procedures Bylaw, the process the committee will follow is that the applicants will be heard first, followed by those in support of the application. Next, those registered for information are heard, next registered for opposition are heard, followed by those for information. Finally, the applicant may return to speak in rebuttal to comments made, but no new information is permitted. Please note that when your name is called, it is your opportunity to speak. However, you're not obligated to do so. For a more in-depth overview of the public hearing process and other information pertaining to what happens before, during, and after a public hearing, please consult the City Clerk's Department website. And please note that all public hearings are recorded and they will be a part of the public record. Should you have any questions after the hearings have concluded, please contact the City Clerk's office. I'll open with item number 1. This is a variance at 414 and 418 Gertrude Avenue under file DAV 12641102026D. Participants in the Zoom meeting will be muted and only permitted to speak when they are called upon. At this point, if it's the will of the committee, I would hand it over to the planner for an overview. Yes.
Dave, go ahead.
This is a variance that is associated with a previous subdivision and rezoning, a variance that came to this committee in May of last year. 414 Gertrude Avenue is located on the south side of Gertrude Avenue, 4 properties east of Osborne Street in the River Osborne neighborhood of the Fort Rouge East Fort Garry ward. The property was approved to be rezoned RMU, Residential Mixed Use District, and is approximately 12,000 square feet in area. Under Complete Communities Direction Strategy 2.0, the site is within the Mature Communities Policy Area, and under the Cordon Osborne Secondary Plan, the site is within the Mid-Rise TOD, or Transit Oriented Development Mixed Use Policy Area. The applicant has requested adding an additional story on top of the building, so this would change it from the original 5 stories to 6 stories, which would increase the number of units from 32 dwelling units to 40 dwelling units. As a result of these changes to the buildings, or to the building, pardon me, a density variance and a parking variance is required. Both of these variances are being recommended for approval by the Public Service. The parking would work out to a ratio of 0.7 stalls per dwelling unit, which is within the supportable range that the Public Service typically recommends within this area. And the density is also supportable based on the density variance. The applicant would be, or the administration is recommending that the applicant enroll in the density bonus pilot program as one of the conditions of approval. That concludes my summary of the variance, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
The only question is, with respect to the density bonus program.
Yes.
What I'll ask the same thing of the applicant. Where is the applicant's thinking on that? Presumably they've already enrolled, but talk to me about that.
Sure, of course. The applicant is aware that this condition was coming, and they were amenable to it. They are, I believe, they're in talks to facilitate the density bonus program. They were not originally required to be part of the density bonus pilot program because their density was not at a threshold that prompted the pilot program. The condition, or the optional, or the conditions that we've included are that 50% of the units in excess of 1 dwelling unit per 360 square feet be part of this program, but we have tweaked the language to say that or fewer if deemed necessary by the Director of Planning, Property and Development. So if you'll recall, there was one on Sherbrooke that came to this committee several months ago, and one of the issues there was that there was no flexibility at all in the condition, even though it was deemed reasonable to change the density on that one. So this one takes the committee's considerations into account and makes sure that these folks would not have to come back to the committee if the director determined that not quite 50% was acceptable.
Yeah. I think it's important because I've been, I think I was like the architect of the density bonusing. I moved it through council, but there are some areas where I would approve the density and had approved density without the density bonus programming. So, and so this to me looks like it's on the tipping point. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on that. And the point on all dwellings, in particular needed multifamily, is that we're expeditious because we've seen some real troubles in the pro forma economics and more. And so that's a good discussion. And I think the way forward is to be mindful of what it costs these days to put in a multifamily, and as well as this, as of last month, we have now produced as many housing units through the HAF program as basically the province has since 2023. And that's remarkable given we had our housing resources uploaded by previous governments. and told we weren't in that business. So, but and how under resourced we are in city planning and permits and more. So, okay, let's move forward then. Those were my questions. Thanks for them.
Okay. So, there, any other further questions? No, the location's fine. I looked it up. You're quite out there. I personally am not liking the idea of you apply for something and then you come back later on and switch it up quite a bit. I understand the variance is posted, but it really should have all been done at the rezoning time. They should have their ducks in a row, in my opinion. But again, the area council is okay with that. I'll go with it, but if it's in the Rice Fort Garry area, I'm not sure if I'd do that because it just doesn't seem fair.
Well, hopefully the applicant can also respond to your concerns when they come up.
That's what I'm figuring now.
Yeah, I would like that.
I'm also a little concerned about a minimum of 50% or fewer. Well, what's fewer mean? 4? I don't know what fewer means. So that's my question. Maybe if you want to answer that, like 49, 45, like how fewer is fewer?
Right. Yeah. So the way the program is set up is that 50% is the minimum in excess of the 360 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit. And there's 3 pillars to the program. So it's length of affordability, number of affordable units, and the affordability of the units. And if an applicant is unable to, or they indicate that the project is not feasible by meeting all 3 of those pillars, then they can have a conversation with the administration, and typically it involves showing their pro forma and a review of the pro forma. And if it's provable that the project is not feasible, then in order to ensure that the project is still feasible, the administration can reduce the number until it becomes manageable. There's not a set number because it would be case by case, but there are staff who are one of their tasks is to review these and make sure that the intent of the program is still being met.
The intent of the program is 50%, and they're going to be met because we're going to be flexible and maybe 20%. They can answer this, of course. So that gets me a little concerned. Again, the area council will keep following this. I know she understands the ward better than I do. But I think, and that'll be a question I'll have for the applicant. How do we know it's going to be somewhere around 50%? If you really want this, because you are adding a floor, which will again, the area is pretty okay for that. And then there is parking issues there. And then you're going to go down to 16 instead of 31, which like you said, kind of close to where 1-to-1. So 0.75 even. So I'm not too overly concerned. I am a little concerned when we say we're going to delegate, because that wasn't really one of the big pillars of this density bonus program was you're going to have affordable housing in it. And if you want to, and I don't think the department would say, okay, 10 is okay. But again, we'll never know because with delegated authority. So we could change it if the council wanted to. We could change it. That's come back to community committee for approval, but I won't be here for that. So I'll leave that with the area councilor. But okay, so those are my questions. You've answered that quite well for me. Seeing no more, let's move on.
Sounds great. So I will call forward the applicant who's joining us via Zoom. It's Matt Sibinal. If you could just start your video. There you are.
Hi, thank you very much, Dylan, Councillor Rollins, and Councillor Orlico. Just to address some of your concerns and comments, we did make the application to the province on March 23rd. So there will be an agreement for 50% affordability for anything beyond the density requirement. So no plan to go less than 50% there. And in terms of your comment on why the change now, I agree. It's unfortunate. I should have made this application along with the DAS said. That was about 1.5 years ago. And construction costs are what they are. They've come back a lot higher than I expected. And so increasing the scale helps with that square foot cost. In terms of parking, we are, I don't know if Dylan mentioned this, but we are adding a car share stall as well. So that should help. And we're very close to the rapid transit station as well.
Okay, good answer. Thank you very much. Anybody else have any further questions?
No, thank you, Matt. Nice seeing you. It's been a long time coming, I know. And so good work on this, and say hi to George.
I will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, moving on.
We do not have anyone registered to speak in support of the item unless any gentleman in the gallery would like to register in support or speak in support. So then we would move on to someone registered in opposition. I have Michael Friesen joining us via Zoom, so I will prompt you to, here you are, welcome.
Hi there, thank you.
All right. Sorry, Mike, I got a cutout there. I'm asking you to unmute and turn on your video.
Okay,
You're back.
does that work?
Yes.
Sorry, I think I actually accidentally hit driving mode. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Yeah, so Michael Friesen, I would own the 408 Gertrude just adjacent to the 414, 418 property there. And I apologize, I missed the previous zoning change last year as well too. So this is just me kind of getting on record. We are not meant to oppose the redevelopment or additional housing principle. For us, it's just we oppose the approval proceeding until there's enforceable neighbor agreement protecting 408 Gertrude from the structural impacts of a 6-story, 5 or 6-story building. So we have a mix of a 2-story, single-story building, and the inherent snow load that would be caused by that would cause some critical public safety issues that we've noted, and there's supporting engineering report as well too for that. So that's one of the main concerns, and the follow-on drainage effects. The second would be the operator of 408 Gertrude being New Leaf Massage Therapy, just with the impacts of the construction and disruption to that business as well too. So that's kind of the two main concerns with it. I will note though that we want to have that neighbor agreement with Matt and his company, and we are in very good talks on that as well too. So I do believe we're coming to an agreement there. So I just want to get this formally on the record. But I do just want to note our concern for first the safety of the public, and then also just the business disruption aspect.
Thank you. For the record, I'll put the public service on notice with respect to how the city generally considers the considerate construction issue. And thank you for your time today. I know you're in the car, so whether you're running from meeting to meeting or whether you're ran out for some privacy from work, thanks for being here.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Moving on.
Okay, I do not have anyone else registered in opposition. Seeing no one else for opposition, and I don't have anyone registered for information. Not seeing any hands up.
So for the administration, if you could respond to Mr. Friesen's concerns, generally I know the answer. We rely on the developer a lot on this. And I'll tell you, with the extreme weather events, there's been some doozies. Whole houses that are on the move into a pit, I've been really running from site to site. Now, that is about shoring up. That is about improper shoring up and a dramatic weather event. But I don't, I do take these issues lightly. I don't take these issues lightly. Yikes! Sorry, Mr. Friesen. But we tend to be here at a public hearing to approve
how it relates to policy. And then if you can, describe how we kind of enter into that conversation.
Sure, of course. So a lot of the construction practices on the site and everything else associated with that, the design of the building, the structural components, that is reviewed by the plan examination branch in the planning property and development department. And those folks, there's a permitting system in place where at various stages before you can advance to your next permit, you're required to have the earlier permit approved. And that is intended to ensure that sites are designed and then constructed in accordance with safe construction practices and what was signed off and approved by folks in the plan examination branch. So you noted shoring. Of course, that's a component of it, and plan examination will have a look at somebody's construction plans and determine whether or not shoring is required, and then the depth and other natures of that. A lot of that is a civil engineering discussion that is had with that branch. If there are concerns with the construction practices in particular on a site, neighbors, residents are always welcome to reach out to the city, and they can make us aware, and then we can send out somebody to in an enforcement capacity to make sure that the site is adhering to its approved permits. I think does that address your question in part?
Yeah, it's good to hear, the other component, the resident really answered with respect to the ongoing discussions. So, with that, I don't have any further questions, Mr. Chair, unless you do.
Nope.
Okay.
Anybody else? Seeing none, Councillor Rollins, we can proceed.
We should.
Oh wait, now we have to begin because the new information came back in. That's
Because he's speaking in rebuttal to any comments that he might have heard. So I'd like to make sure he has that opportunity. So Matt, I will bring you back forward. Welcome back.
As Mike had mentioned, we have been in ongoing talks. We met a few months ago for lunch and have been in touch ever since. So we're working on a legal agreement and terms of compensation for damages and lost business. Our buildings along a portion of the property line are actually touching. So where we remove our building, we'll address any facade issues, whether it be cladding or insulation. That's part of the agreement. In terms of shoring, we're not proposing a basement here, and we are 6 feet away from the property line, whereas before we were right on the property line. So I don't see any issues in that area. But yeah, so far it's been a good conversation with Mike, and I'll be dealing with the contractor M-Builds in terms of keeping Mike aware of the project schedule and any work that would impact his business.
Thank you.
Okay. Then we would proceed into motion.
Okay. If I can, I'll move that the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read.
All support, opposed, carried.
I move that the receipt of public representations be concluded.
All support, opposed, carried.
I move that in accordance with subsection 2473 of the City of Winnipeg Charter, the variance is consistent with Plan Winnipeg, and any applicable secondary plan does not create a substantial adverse effect on the amenities, use, safety, and convenience of the adjoining property and adjacent area, including an area separated by the property by a street or waterway. Is the minimum modification of a zoning bylaw required to relieve the injurious effects of the zoning bylaw on the applicant's property and is compatible with the area in which the property to be affected is situated? In terms of supporting reasons, much like the administration reports suggest, and I'll point to the previous hearing, we want to see this in Winnipeg, and I move that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in, and the variance be approved.
Support.
Aye.
Opposed, none, carried.
And finally, I move that the public hearing with respect to this application be concluded with thanks to all the parties.
Support. Aye. Opposed, none, carried.
Please note that the committee's decision with respect to this application may be appealed. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the order issued, which will be mailed to all persons who have registered. Item 2 is a rezoning at 626 and 628 Garwood Avenue under file DAZ 2010-2026. In accordance with the City of Winnipeg Charter and the Development Procedures Bylaw, it's a combined hearing, and the following items will also be heard at the same time. Item 3, which is a variance at the same address under file DAV 270917-2025D. And item 4 is a conditional use at the same address under file DCU 131893-2026D. Please note that communications were received in opposition to the matter. These have been distributed to members of the committee yesterday afternoon. The process the committee will follow is that the applicant will be heard first, followed by those in support, those in opposition, and those registered for information. The applicant may return to speak in rebuttal to comments made, but no new information is permitted at that point. And speakers will be permitted 5 minutes on their presentation. I don't have anyone joining via Zoom for this one, so I would recommend an overview from a planner.
Right, this is a rezoning to the residential 2-family district with associated variances and an associated conditional use to allow for a 6-unit multifamily building. The property is located at the southeast corner of Garwood Avenue and Hugo Street North in the Earl Grey neighborhood of the Fort Rouge East Fort Garry ward. The property is located in an established neighborhood, mature community policy area of Complete Communities 2.0. And it is approximately 5,058 square feet in area. The applicant intends to construct a 6-unit multifamily development, which would be oriented towards Garwood Avenue and Hugo Street North. The building would be 2 stories in height and approximately 30 feet 9 3/8 of an inch. It would have a 13-foot front yard setback from the building foundation to the Garwood Avenue property line and an 8-foot front yard setback from the front porch and balcony to the Garwood Avenue property line. It would have a 6-foot west side yard setback to Hugo Street North and a 6 3/4 of an inch east side yard setback to the abutting property. The proposal meets the preferred location criteria contained in the infill guidelines for low-rise residential multifamily buildings. The only place where it does not comply with the infill guidelines is that it technically has a greater deviation than the plus or minus 5-foot front yard setback. The reason for this is that the primary mass of the building does meet the plus or minus 5 feet, but because of the size of the balcony, the front yard is measured to where the balcony is located. And so that takes it beyond the 5 feet. The variances that are associated with this, so the first one I alluded to is a front yard of 8 feet instead of 17 feet. Again, the reason why that's being prompted is because of the balcony projection. The administration has recommended approval of this, with the reason being, well, twofold. First of all, the balconies are located along the west, or far away from the neighboring property and to the west of the front facade, meaning that they're not directly next to the neighboring property, and so the impact is minimized, and it creates significant outdoor living space for folks who will be potentially living in these units. The next variance is 5 parking spaces instead of 6 spaces. This is supported based on the fact that it's a relatively small variance, a deviation of 1 parking stall. The property is located close to Pembina Highway. There are significant commercial amenities available, or transit in particular. And then the third variance is insufficient buffering of parking and loading areas located within 20 feet of a side or rear lot line adjacent to a residential district. This is a very frequent variance that we've come across. When parking is taken from the rear lane, it would be impossible to put buffering along the rear property without blocking access to the stalls from the lane. And then the conditional use is to allow for a multiple family dwelling in the R2 zoning district, because multiple families are a conditional use in that zoning district. The administration has recommended approval of the rezoning and of the variances, and of the conditional use. And that concludes my summary, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. So, any questions, Councilor Rawls? I got you. Let me start.
Yeah, if you can start.
And
I'm just thinking about.
So the reason we're here today is because it's 6 units, not 4. plus on the rezoning stuff.
Right.
They have rights to do 4, they have rights to do 6. How tall is this building? 30 feet, 35 feet?
It's just over 30 feet measured to the peak of the roof.
30. Okay. Oh, take it over there. I hear what you're saying about the front yard setback. And I'm not sure how keen I am that one, but maybe I will be keener. You can tell me that down the line on Garwood, on that block, you're not going to use that, well, you will, because this could be 2 years down the line. Well, we have other property here, only have a 5 years, a minimal setback. So, it's okay. We take the average. So you guys can all come out farther too. Is that correct? Am I understanding how this works?
Yes, it will change the front yard alignment going down the block. The front yard alignment is give or take usually 3 to 4 houses within the immediate vicinity.
Yeah.
And so if you go significantly further down west down Garwood, it wouldn't factor in.
The corner lot kind of makes sense, but then it does impact the other properties down the block that also could be done similar to this. Parking I didn't have a problem with. Yeah, the front yard setback is one I feel nervous on. And I'll ask the applicant why I just didn't do 4. We're given, these are really small little houses in that whole area there. 4 is already a lot. The other houses I think are somewhere 1-story houses, and you're going to be putting which you have right to do to get to a 30-foot building, but usually a single house. But now he wants to do a 30-foot 6-unit building. So I don't think the height would actually change much, even if you did a 4-unit, because that's what we allow. But it's going to have an impact on that little block. But okay, I'm putting the front yard setback, and I'll ask him about that. Is my key, and I'll be quite honest about it. When we give people the rights to do 4, that's what they got. As of right, they're adding 2 more, 3 more, 1 more. Sometimes it makes sense. If they do other design changes like that one on Ash, 5 made sense to push it away from the adjoining neighborhood block. And it was on a busy residential street, Collector Street. So there are occasions but my default is you got 4, you get 4. You shouldn't be coming asking for more. That's just my opinion. So I'll leave it at that, but I definitely would like to hear from the applicant about why 6 was chosen and why they see the need to put that the front yard, that variance in there for the front yard setback. Okay, thank you.
I'm good to go. I don't really have any questions.
Super. Okay, go ahead. Well, anybody else? You got some that for us? Okay, go ahead.
Sounds good. So we'll call forward Landon Friesen on behalf of the applicant.
I think this is where I sit, right?
Yeah.
Good morning. So I'm Landon Friesen, K&H Schwatsky. So I am representing the developer on this one. And as far as the building itself, it's a 6-unit, 3-story, but very similar in size to many of the other buildings in the area. Specifically 6 units instead of 4. Part of the thought process there, one is just the realities with construction costs these days and pulling whatever rental income you can to offset the inflated costs. And the other is with 6 2-beds, 2-beds was kind of the market that was asked for in this area. Usually if you're gonna, sorry, this is unprofessional.
No, it's okay.
I turned it down.
Nice.
So with if 4 units was pursued, it would be a similar building size. You'd probably be in. They would want to go for 3-bedroom units, and then you have 4. So you're more geared towards families, and these infills with smaller yards are not necessarily. That's not the market that the developer in this situation was going after. And so for a 2-bedroom, it's just a little bit of a smaller human footprint on that lot. Because of its proximity to Pembina, downtown Osborne, that whole area, the market reality there was not as much maybe a larger family, but the 2-bedroom just supporting maybe you have 1 kid, 2 kids, that kind of thing, or just a couple, or even students would have access to transit to get to university. It's a corner lot. Again, the 5 stalls instead of the 6 wasn't a huge issue as far as being in line with the planner, because you have Viking, you have rapid transit. It's referred to as the missing middle often in the city, where you get these like anytime obviously you can get higher units. The friction is always, well, are they still at market rent? But it allows you to be more competitive if required with the current climate, because you have those 6 units instead of the 4. And I wanted to note too that it has a 6.5 foot side yard shed property beside, so it's not like with a 4 unit, you can go 4 feet from your side yard. So there is spatial awareness there. Most of the trees on that lot are all boulevard trees, and those would remain, and that always adds to, I guess, the immediate impact visually anyways of a development is when you can keep those larger trees, and that would be also supplemented by additional trees inside the lot. So all in all, we felt like just the scale of the building, even though it's 6 units instead of 4, was sensitive to the area in the city that is being built. Yeah.
Any questions?
Oh, no, that's good. I do want to make a comment though on parking reductions. It is just a reflection. I'd like both the applicant and the public service to reflect on, and my colleagues. In City Center, we do really well in density, so well that I grew by 5,000 population and now represent almost 60,000 people. River Heights also grew in this way, and given that, Fort Rouge East Fort Garry is landlocked, that's a significant uptake in building up, not out. At the same time, we don't have the diversity of parking curbside management products that we see in other cities. Montreal, Toronto, for instance, have zones around hospitals, local parking only zones off commercial district for residential streets. Instead, what we do in the city is we put a 2-hour parking limitation on the city street, and we then force people who, like other people, want to host Thanksgiving dinner or events that last more than 3 hours to do a car shuffle with one parking product, a parking permit that is employed for all various scenarios. So while I don't believe this is a huge motivation for me today, and I do believe that it is 1 fewer parking stalls that is a minimum modification, I am increasingly concerned that the policy isn't keeping pace to the economics that projects like yours are throwing down and increasing in the city. Opportunities for housing for divorced parents, opportunities for housing for seniors, and more in their own neighborhood, also important. We are missing middle, and we are missing middle in Earl Grey neighborhood specifically. But it is a consideration of mine on parking, given the lack of co-commitment work within urban planning, and to understand the parking constraints in the neighborhood off commercial districts like Pembina. So if you could reflect on that, I know that's not a question per se, but the question is, could you reflect on it briefly?
Yeah, I think on this lot, it is actually possible to get 6 stalls in the back. part of the reason that we went to 4, that was, I believe, was a discussion that was had with planning. And in order to get a buffer on the Hugo corner side, a planting buffer, to shield and just visually, I guess, change the parking lot feel of what would be there instead, it was decided that 5 units is what would be pursued. Or 5 stalls, sorry. Yeah.
Because it would be effectively extending into the side yard off of
Yeah.
the street.
Yeah, there would be no buffer from Hugo of
Into it, yeah.
landscaping or grass or that
Yeah.
extent. Yeah.
Okay. I will suggest that that's a good job by planning.
Yeah. It's a lot of people walk up.
Okay.
It's a very walkable neighborhood.
Mhm.
Yeah. Any other questions? I have a few, but it's very little.
It was an excellent answer.
It was a good
Pleased
answer.
with that answer.
It was good.
Very pleased with that answer. Yeah.
In that vein, these will be the apartments.
Apartments, yeah.
Are you looking at having bike share anywhere in there or some storage locking space? It's a beautiful neighborhood, but bikes get lost a lot in that area and mine as well.
Right.
And protected bike storage.
There is, there's just an outdoor bike storage area. So, I mean, you could walk up there, but yeah, there is nothing interior at this
Okay,
time.
that's fine. But you do have at least some space dedicated outdoors.
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
That's better than nothing.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate your comment about, so when you did the quick quote thing, you want to do more, what's in it for everybody else? Well, your side yard, I think the neighbor third house in is going to be relatively pleased to have, because right now I think it's 0 side yard. Those would look like from the picture.
Yeah.
To have that 6.5 feet will provide a lot more space for that neighbor. So that to me is tangible as a reason why you would be able to go up.
Yeah.
And not just do 4, because you're right. I think the 4-plex side yards are ridiculously small, but
Yeah.
I lost that battle. So this is a good compromise to that. So I'm pretty good on that. Parking out there. The side yard, so explain to me why you want to have that variance for the front yard setback.
Right. Oh, sorry. Yeah. The front yard setback. So that again was, like, Dylan had mentioned, is on the corner side of the property. In regards to affecting the front yard alignments for the rest of the street, I never really thought of that. And I have one question, before I get further in that. If that balcony was just a single story, would that still trigger the front yard, alignment or variance?
Probably not, no.
But
Yeah, it's,
Getting up.
it's the balcony, not the porch.
So it comes down to, it was in order to be as economical as possible, because the front porch was already there, it's a matter of extending up and sharing the same foundation in that situation, and providing the second story with an outdoor space, other than, like, each unit has its own access to the outside. So they would technically have a landing in order to get into their unit, but like just off of their living area now, there is this balcony that they can use.
Yeah.
There wasn't necessarily consideration to how that affected, I guess, future front yard alignments in that area.
Well, future council can actually, because corner lots, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Actually, the sound buffering, there's a number of reasons why you want to do it on corner lot. But right now, our policies on front yard setbacks, maybe that's something the new council could look at and say corner lots is okay and it doesn't impact everybody else down the street.
Right.
But again, I'll leave that to a new council to go address. Okay, but thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions? See none? Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Have fun in your pool. It's coming back this week.
It's fun back.
Okay, next up in support registered, I have Armin Barsonian. Is that you?
No, Armin, I'm actually filling in for Armin. He wasn't able to make it, so.
Gotcha. I don't have anyone else registered in support. Are you looking to speak in support of the application?
Against or for information?
Who's here?
Oh, just spectating. Okay, no problem.
Fair enough.
So in opposition, I had forwarded 2 communications from neighbors yesterday afternoon. I don't see anybody else speaking in opposition, and I do not have anyone registered for information.
Fair enough. Okay, we're gonna move forward then.
Is there any questions for the public service?
A good round on that. Seeing none.
And
Okay, moving forward.
Like, we have to offer you the opportunity to say anything.
No, you can't, because we didn't say anything.
I know, but
Oh, now we have to let them out our plea, they don't say anything? Oh, that makes no sense at all.
rebuttal, I know.
A rebuttal on nothing?
Well, they can.
But then they get second kick at the can. And then the other.
No new information.
That makes, no, again.
Would you,
Yeah.
do you have any? There was no information.
I do have one question. Do I need to go up there?
Sure, I guess, it's, but the question's not, we're not. Questions.
Yeah, if it doesn't necessarily need to, it's more a curiosity thing.
Okay, well then,
Well, no, I'm really
But
keen.
that's something I feel like I can work out later.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm gonna talk to you later about that one, the idea that even though there's no new information provided, and they were still giving the applicant a rebuttal time on nothing. Because they haven't spoken anything, but again, I'll take that offline with Carlos, that's not your job.
Okay,
Okay, so ready to go?
yeah, if you're ready.
I am ready to.
Okay, so I'll move that the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read.
Support, opposed, carried.
I move that the receipt of public representations be concluded.
Support, opposed, carried.
I move that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in and forwarded to this executive policy committee via the priority rezoning. Oh, there was an appeal, sorry. And forwarded by the standing policy committee on property and development. In terms of supportive reasons, there is always a tension between the front yard side back as it relates to the neighborhood and the livable outdoor space. And here we see real decisions that I would have made too with the tension. I like balconies, I like windows. I don't like to see a mass of space that could contribute to windows. Be disrupted because it doesn't create a nice space to live in. And I do think that if ultimately we approve it, that's our job. I like a balcony, especially if we're trying to address the missing middle. It's an opportunity to grow plants. It's an opportunity to, drape some nice plants on the balcony. And we have some excellent examples of this model of a 6-story in the neighborhood, in particular on Grosvenor, I'll point out, which is a Sharesy zone between Councillor Orlico and I. And so I see here the Winnipeg Public Service being really sensitive to the design of Earl Grey. This has the pitched roof that the neighbors like. I really hope that we'll see the materials like the shingle style that you've got that does reflect the 3-story homes in the neighborhood. And while I appreciate that the infill guidelines and the subsequent rezoning hearings that we've done really address 4 units as of right. I'll point out that before the hearing and after, the 6 units were actually the typical model we see. It was more frequent model that we'd see, and that the 4 units weren't, as the public service pointed out, sort of the economic tone of the day. So it really, we've seen a lot of different types of things come through since we did the zoning process. But in terms of supportive reasons, a lot of the attention that the public service paid to the collaborative process with the applicant, it produced really great decision making, and so moved.
Okay, other comments?
No.
No, I just want to point out, in our targets, we're way past the point of missing middle. We've done a lot of missing middle. So when that gets brought up to justification, we didn't do 6 plexes, we did 4 plexes. Again, this is a case by case basis. I'll look at it, but again, I've been hammered by this a few times. Well, we need to keep building the missing middle. No, based upon our targets, we're well past that. So yes, you may ideologically feel that way, and that's fine. I don't disagree. But again, 6 units is much different than a 4 units, especially on certain locations. So
And this is on a corner.
and this is on a corner. So that's it again, and some of the other variables they're putting in here. So I understand that. And then when you guys will be doing the bylaw review, zoning review, I'm fully expecting to see 6 units pop up. part of that review.
Sherry?
But part of it.
Oh, okay.
Some councillors for sure, some other councillors won't, some other councillors aren't involved at all, because they don't have the full range of services. We'll see what happens down the line on that, but in this case, I definitely will support it because the developer has decided to push that side yard over to give them a better side yard versus the fourplex, and it is a corner lot, so I can support this as well.
Yeah, that's a really good discussion. I do have concerns off of Pembina. I mean, we had a whole A&W that we approved, or that maybe we really discussed where the entrance and exits would be, and we've changed the face, you and I, of Pembina, that entrance going for Gary side. My side needs some love and attention.
It's a little more
It's all me, commercial,
The BRTs.
rail, and then, so, I'm sad that you won't be my partner, but anyways, that's the motion.
Sounds good.
So, Betty.
Okay,
Yeah.
that is Clue.
Oh, and, I'll move that, the public hearing with respect to this application be concluded.
All support, opposed, carried.
So that was all consensus driven. That was
Yep.
great.
Yeah, it was good.
Please note that the committee has made a recommendation on this particular matter that will now proceed to council. No further representations are permitted on the rezoning, and all persons registered for the public hearing will receive notice when the matter is to be considered by council.
Moving on to variance.
Variance, yes.
I move that the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read.
All support, opposed, carried.
I move that the receipt of public representations be concluded.
All support, opposed, carried.
I move that in accordance with subsection 2473 of the City of Winnipeg Charter, the variance is consistent with Plan Winnipeg and any applicable secondary plan does not create a substantial adverse effect on the amenities, use, safety, and convenience of the adjoining property and adjacent area, including an area separated from the property by a street or waterway is the minimum modification of zoning bylaw required to relieve the injurious effect of the zoning bylaw on the applicant's property and is compatible with the area in which the property be affected is situated. In terms of supportive reasons, we've had a really good discussion actually on the variances, and I will put that discussion on the record and the previous supportive reasons so moved.
Okay, all support? Ayes, opposed, none, carried.
I move that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in and the variance be approved.
Support, opposed, carried.
And I move that the public hearing with respect to this application be concluded with thanks to those who participated in the hearing, including those that wrote City Center.
All right, all support, opposed, carried.
Please note that the committee's decision with respect to the variance application may be appealed. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so is included in the order issued, which will be mailed to all persons registered.
Okay.
And conditional use.
There's a final note with conditional use. The conditional use is recommended for approval for an R2 mature communities PDO, the zoning bylaw to permit establishment of a multifamily dwelling use. It is curious to me that it is conditional. Conditional on what is typically the question. And so if the public service, when I'm looking in the public service report, I find the answer on page 8 and 9. I'll go through and return to that in a minute. That the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read.
Support, opposed, carried.
That the receipt of public representations be concluded.
All support, opposed, carried.
That in accordance with section 254 of the subsection
2473 of the City of Winnipeg Charter, the conditional use is consistent with Plan Winnipeg, and any applicable secondary plan does not create a substantial adverse effect on amenities, use, safety, and convenience of the adjoining property and adjacent area, including an area separated from the property by street or waterway, and is compatible with the area in which the property to be affected is situated. Page 8 and 9, you get some complete communities direction 2.0 language and some analysis which involves the building setback and the contextual suitability of front and corner side properties and the need to support the pedestrian environment, I'll point out. And so while we've spoken to a bit of these in our previous supportive reasons, I'll just point those pages out in this record because we don't often see this part of the hearing. So moved.
All right, all support? Opposed? None? Carried.
And I move that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in and the conditional use be approved.
Support? Opposed? None? Carried.
I move that the public hearing with respect to this application be concluded with thanks.
All support? Opposed? Carried.
Please note that the committee's decision on the conditional use may be appealed. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so is included in the order issued, and that is mailed to all persons registered. Would you like to go back to motions?
Yes, I think we have
New business?
a final new
You're all done.
business.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we have a final new business motion concerning the retirement for Councillor John Orlico. Yes. So if I may, Mr. Chair.
You may. You said very scarily.
So to fellow survivors of community committee meetings, Councillor Orlico entered City Hall so long ago that some of us, and I was around for all the runs, including the runs that you didn't quite make it here. But I think genuinely people would have assumed that, you know, you were taking part in some sort of school civics project because you look so young. You also had a penchant for wearing bike shorts, and I'm guessing they made it out to the campaigning sometimes. I think you did, yeah. So he did come from trusteeship, so the school civics projects and how wet he was behind the ears is probably fair. But Councillor Orlico arrived at council looking so young, and I don't know if you recall that security wouldn't let you in the building. I'm joking. Also, that security also asked if your parents were present and to sign you in. Do you remember that too?
Security gave me the master key by accident.
Yeah, I remember that. And it's not your order. Now, after so many years, 3 mayors,
Yeah.
3 mayors, countless debates, and like, what is it, Councillor Gilroy? Is it 47,000 motions on trees?
That's about.
Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Is it? I think it's accurate.
Yeah.
About 47,000 discussions about trees and motions. He's leaving City Hall as Winnipeg's most experienced crossing guard for urban forestry, tree hugger, bona fide tree hugger, and tree policypreneur.
Hey, business card.
But if Councillor Gilroy and I know if River Heights was Riverdale, then John has always been Archie Andrews to Councillor Gilroy and I.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not because he's accident prone, right? Not because of those reasons. And for the record, not because he's our love interest. Okay, that's also that you better clarify that. Sylvia's the love of his life.
Exactly.
Sylvia's the love of his life. She's always had him just captured.
Yeah.
And although there were a few committee agendas that suggested otherwise, somehow he's spent his time at City Hall caught between 2 loves. And it's not Betty and Veronica. It is the one side, neighborhood preservation.
mature communities, heritage, and making sure every tree has a lawyer. I'm kidding about that one. The other ones I'm not kidding about. And on the other side was growth, economic development, investment, and occasionally the realization that the city has to build. And like Archie in the comic books, John spent years trying to keep both sides happy. When everyone seemed upset with him, he'd oftentimes just cut it in half. And no counselor has ever loved the place he grew up more. And no counselor has ever loved trees more. And, you know, most people, when they see a bush or a tree, they go, well, that's a nice tree. John sees a tree and thinks, has anyone checked whether this elm has been properly consulted on this development? Like, has anyone checked? Has anyone checked if this elm tree has been properly consulted? No? Okay, let's talk about that. Let's throw a motion right now.
Let me do that one.
Yeah, it is really remarkable that you and Dave Dumke and you know have such a great relationship. Urban forestry, because you've been its champion. You fought for recreation centers too, and you know while you did, you were also fighting for that emotional well-being of our tree canopy. And you know, while we all know, the whole city knows, the whole country knows, one forest was taken away from you. Entire forests sleep better because you were here. And when you announced your retirement, you know, in addition to several mature ash trees commenting and lowering their branches, we know they whispered, "Thank you for your service." Your accomplishments, success, you know, really substantial. The Waverly Overpass, the Bill and Helen Norrie Library, the Brenda Leipsic Dog Park that took a chunk out of you, right? The work you did to honor Councillor Leipsic, the chunk, I had several front row seats of chunks being taken out of you. And, you know, that toll and that campaign taught me so much about what is all negotiated here. And my dog, Truth Bader Ginsburg, thanks you. We can be found on cold days, Darcy and I walking along the path, checking on the bus rapid transit, and Truth Bader Ginsburg getting with the local huskies that she just loves so much. But your major achievements, the representation that truly matters, is found somewhere. Making a tract of land prettier, getting a book, getting the Friends of Assiniboine School really park up and running, and that truly meaningful reconciliation work and that monument going. But those simple things like walking your dog in the neighborhood, you never forget. You never forget you. And you've taken your fair share of siblings' dogs to walk, and your mama's large dogs. You served 3 mayors, Sam Cates, Brian Bowman, Scott Gillingham, and at various times you've chaired EPC, you've chaired P&D, you've chaired community services, you've chaired the first ever economic development committee of council. You have, and this is what many of your colleagues don't know about you, but we do. You have the best political gut in the business. And that political acumen is not something you can learn. It is something you have in your gut. To know how a policy is going to land, to know how a program is going to land, and to be able to say what happens next, that is what I'm going to miss most. that is what I've missed most when you're not by my side at Executive Policy Committee. That's what I've missed the most, with, not having you here as much as I would like, because of health and more. That gut is invaluable, and that gut is just not anything you can learn. It's really something that you have innately. So when you said, as you have in interviews, you're putting some things in perspective. You have time to do something else now, and now is time before it's too late. It's a beautiful sentiment. And we also know it comes from like a deep experience with how quickly life goes, and that work is really secondary to our beautiful families, which I really had the honor of raising my families with yours, going to the same elementary school, and high school and more. But most Winnipeggers probably heard that quote and thought, oh, there's like trees that John hasn't visited yet, and he wants to get to them. But you arrived here as really a baby-faced counselor, barely out of your tight speed skating outfit from Kelvin.
Go ahead.
And you still have it.
Halloween coming up.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
No, you won't.
I'm very excited for your wife. You leave.
Gonna have to get faster.
I'm guessing. Yeah. Sorry, Sylvia. I won't finish that sentence on your behalf. You leave as Winnipeg's elder statesman of collaboration, consultation, and canopy protection. And you prove public service can be really thoughtful, decent, and principled as a counselor, which is why I predict you're going to have so many come, because you made the job look so good. And so while Archie eventually leaves Riverdale, everyone knows he'll still be wandering around town, checking on things, offering advice, and making sure nobody does anything too reckless. And I want to say congratulations on your retirement, and may your days be filled with all your girls and family and travel. I know you'll still find a way to serve the community. And I think Winnipeggers can be comforted in the knowledge that trees are standing, forests are standing in this city because you worried about it first. So I love you. City Center Community Committee is going to send this up to council as a record of your retirement. If just Councillor Gilroy and I approve it, we're going to miss you, and Betty and Veronica will go on, but Archie is really what the book has been about at City Center.
Thank you very much. And City Center has been throughout my days of, because I believe in local. So City Center's always been in my heart, and you got to be a lot of fun with some very serious issues that we've done. Houses that Councillor Jabassi, we were doing housing before. Everybody said you're not allowed to touch housing, right? So those days it's just beating our heads against the wall. But this committee has always beaten their head against the wall. So we heard it today from Councillor Rollins. I think what she's suggesting, we have to push, but you push in a respectful way. So we're going to have different opinions, push in a way that is from your heart and from your soul, and respect that other people may not agree with you, but we all have to work collaboratively. But we have to keep doing that. The public deserves to have that kind of respect. And that's part of the reason I just see politics where it's going now, not because community committee, but even here around where it's very divisive. It's not like we talked about before, we're not having, I don't even know why we have UBC still. But again, we do. It's very divisive. So we need to find a way. Council has an enormous number of issues to deal with, from poison drugs out there, or just drugs in general, mental health issues, poverty, plus how we're gonna pay for growth going forward, because growth of not pay for growth, Scott. So we have to figure out how to do all that, and that's why I'm very happy to be able to leave with you two, and still staying on charge. I appreciate that so much. It would be difficult if you both were resigning, that'd be hard. And then I have my tree baron now with Emma Drownwood.
Yes.
Yeah, have her in my court now.
Yeah.
She makes my life a little bit easier to pass that tree file off than I have, and she's willing to work with me in the future as I'll stay with Trees Winnipeg and Hedgewood Park and another tree company group. They stay with that, and then I'll be working in the poverty sector, probably linking Hope. They're having big problems there. So I'll say that, but again, I'm gonna take some time to cabin, just with Sylvia. We'll do a little bit of traveling, and it's just time to try out private life. It's been 7, 8 years of public life, end of 82 years of Orlico public life. So and when you say I get it naturally, it's kind of bred into my DNA by now. But again, it's always the same thing. Look at your neighbor and say, I did the best I can. And they may say you're still a jerk, but that's fine. You know you did the best you can. So, and I know this community committee, we've really pushed everything. I love even the fact how we share our grants. I tell the people that we share our grants with West End, they're horrified by that.
Yeah.
I go, I'm horrified. You think you should be horrified. We have revenue and we need to spread that out nicely between each of us. With never consideration of trying to hog it just for some other committees do it just for the areas and stuff. So again, that just shows the kind of community committee we've always have. So whoever does replace me, I hope they'll share that same philosophy. And if they don't, I know they'll live and I'll go knocking and say, really, come on, this is a group effort here, because we have Councillor Gilroy, and Soraya River Heights, very different than Fort Garry, very different than Daniel McIntyre. But our combined efforts together allows that progressive voice to be able to push the progressive agenda forward. So thank you. Okay, so move to adjourn.
No, so moved.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks, that was very nice.
That's nice.
I'll remember that one in the cap.
When-